Viewpoints. We're talking about the big story of the summer, the cross-border tensions that we've had between Gibraltar and Spain and everything associated with it. We've been receiving emails and tweets over the last half hour, and if you want to join into that debate, you can do so by emailing viewpoint@gbc.gi, and you can go on Twitter as well and use the hashtag GBC Viewpoint. GBC, of course, has been dragged kicking and screaming into the digital age there, so you can join the debates. We will be reading some of those tweets and emails out for you a little bit later on the programme. First, though, we're going to cross the border, metaphorically speaking, of course, and talk to the politician on the other side, Gemma Araujo, the mayor of La Línea, and I asked her whether she felt the dispute this summer had been a political one, or one about sovereignty, or one about fishing. And before we go into that clip, there's a slight sound interference on the recording of the interview, so we apologise for that, but it shouldn't spoil your enjoyment of this interview.
Yo creo que es un tema mal llevado, en este caso, por el Gobierno de España. Principalmente porque no creo que sea ni un problema de soberanía ni un problema de pesca. Es un problema no tener un foro donde poder dialogar cuando surge un problema, sea de pesca o sea de cualquier otra cuestión. Yo creo que ha sido una excusa perfecta para que España volviera a poner sobre la mesa la cuestión de la soberanía. Pero pasado el tiempo y después de haber pasado el verano que hemos pasado, al final el problema de la pesca se resolverá, porque además existe el compromiso del Gobierno de Gibraltar para modificar la normativa y darle una garantía a nuestros pescadores para que puedan faenar donde normalmente lo venían haciendo, y al final el Gobierno de España ha reconocido que debe de ser a través del diálogo la manera de buscar una solución a los conflictos, cuestión esta que veníamos nosotros reivindicando durante todos estos meses atrás.
Do you think this summer would have been as bad if the fishing agreement hadn't been taken away, or if the concrete blocks wouldn't have been dumped into the waters, or was this bound to happen anyway with the Pepe government?
Yo creo que estaban buscando una cortina de humo para tapar otros temas que al PP a nivel nacional le preocupan más. A día de hoy, estando a mediados de septiembre, ya no están las cámaras que estaban, ya no están los medios que estaban, y lo hemos dicho, y yo lo decía. Es triste que cuando todo esto pase y cuando todo este asunto deje de estar, la línea seguirá siendo la gran olvidada de España, y al final tenemos que volver a hacer noticia cuando a alguien se le ocurre utilizar de nuevo Gibraltar como cortina de humo.
Who has been most affected by all this?
Yo creo que las poblaciones. Yo durante todo este tiempo he dicho que tanto los gibraltareños, la población, los vecinos de Gibraltar como los vecinos de la línea, la gente ha sido la que le ha dado una lección a muchos políticos, porque han estado por encima de la brecha que han intentado abrir entre ambos pueblos. Y tampoco el Gobierno de España ha dado ninguna seña sobre cómo va a intentar ayudar al comercio, a la hostelería de la línea, que se ha visto perjudicada. Pero en definitiva, al final, quien definitivamente se ve perjudicado son el pueblo de Gibraltar y el pueblo de la línea.
They are two towns, two cities who have always got on well. There are families and friends on both sides. But this summer we've seen burnt cars, slashed tyres. Are you concerned by all this?
Me preocupan porque es verdad que nos podemos encontrar con radicales a ambos lados. Yo eso lo presupongo. Lo que nunca puedo compartir y lo que condeno firmemente es que se produzcan actos del tipo que se han producido, o con coches quemados o con las lunas rotas de algunos. Sobre todo porque estoy convencida de que es un grupo reducido, tan reducido que no ha llegado más allá, afortunadamente. Y sobre todo porque, como bien dices, la línea y Gibraltar quiere llevarse bien. Yo creo que tenemos, al menos en la línea, muchos otros problemas que ver a Gibraltar como un enemigo, porque no lo son. Y no solo no lo son, sino que ambas poblaciones han peleado siempre por llevarse bien. Yo siempre digo que los errores del pasado no tienen que volver a cometerse, y el cierre de la verja lo vivimos, la población de la línea y la población de Gibraltar. La gente de eso aprendió y ahora quiere que no vuelva a repetirse. Por lo tanto, es lamentable que se hayan producido actos vandálicos de ese tipo, y sobre todo no solo lo vamos a condenar, sino que los vamos a perseguir en el momento en el que podamos tener pruebas para que se puedan perseguir, pero definitivamente la gente de la línea y la gente de Gibraltar quiere llevarse bien.
Okay, and that's an interview with Gemma Araujo recorded earlier on this week. And I'd like to pick up on a point that she made towards the end of that interview, where she said that she feels that the hostilities that have been carried out at the base level are by radicals. But Charles Gomez, you wrote a piece for the Chronicle a few weeks ago where you likened the media hostility campaign by the Spanish state to that put forward by Joseph Goebbels in the 1940s for the Nazis, and the way that Gibraltarians have been dehumanized in the same way as the Jews were dehumanized in the 1940s.
Yeah, no one who's got an ounce of sense and a bit of common sense and has seen and heard what I certainly have taken the time to listen to and see on certain Spanish media outlets and read in newspapers could come to any conclusion other than that there is a campaign to incite hatred. It is an overwhelming campaign. I have reason to believe that it has been planned over a long period of time. It harks back to similar campaigns, for example, more recently than Goebbels, who you mentioned, and is the issues that arose in the former Yugoslavia. I have a report here from the United Nations, which is called Political Propaganda and the Plan to Create a State for All Serbs, Consequences of Using the Media for Ultranationalist Ends. If you read the first 20 pages of this, which is the...
Which we're not going to do
which
right
is,
now.
No, which is the way that the matter was promoted by Milosevic in the late 1980s, you will see extraordinary similarities in terms of exactly what we're hearing now from Madrid. Suggestions that the Kosovans were drug smugglers, that they were destroying the youth of Serbia because of drug smuggling. You have to understand that when you accuse a nation or a group of people of drug smuggling, you're actually accusing them of destroying families. Now, if that is a sort of propaganda at which we are apparently getting accustomed to, and this is very worrying because complacency, I think, is Gibraltar's worst enemy. The idea, oh, it's going to be all right in the end, and this happened last summer and the summer before last. It's never happened before. The campaign of vilification of Gibraltarians has never reached the extent that we've seen in the last
Okay, I'd like to get a cross-border view on that.
Yeah, I may just say one thing, and it continues. It isn't stopping, it is continuing, it's becoming more insidious, because as we have made no response to it at all, the argument now is on the basis that we have now established that Gibraltarians are thieves, criminals, drug smugglers, etc.
But I'd like to ask Susi Barranco, do you feel that that is the perception, for example, in La Línea, of Gibraltarians?
I think not in La Línea, but not... I cannot talk about all the rest of Spain because I am agree in something. It's really that everyone who is not with PP party, with the policies, is behind them. We are not only the Gibraltarians are very bad, smuggling are everything that they have said about you. We are too, because we are not very good Spaniards, they say. We are not very good because we want a dialogue with Gibraltar, and that is not very good for them, and that is not very good for Spain, they say. And people from Madrid, from Seville, from every place that they don't know us, they think that is right. That is, and they think if La Línea people, we are the same people than Gibraltar. I don't know if I can understand that idea very good. It's.
I think we're more or less.
But
Yes,
I've heard various times on some programs, people who are on the panel say that, to face it, if you're going to make an omelette, you've got to break eggs. And the eggs that have to be broken up all the time is La Linea, because you're nearest. But they don't seem to care that you suffer every time. You know, it's said as, well, somebody has to suffer, well, La Linea has to suffer. So not only do you make Gibraltar suffer, but...
The means justify the ends.
But nobody seems to care that La Linea is suffering as well. You know what I mean?
Yes, La Linea.
No, yes, of course, with the fishermen, it's, oh, the fishermen are suffering. But yet when you say the whole La Linea is suffering, yes. Oh, well, you have to break eggs. La Linea is nearest. Those are the eggs broken. They don't seem to care, do they?
Yes. The workers have been called servants. The servants of Gibraltar. You know, on,
Well,
on
again,
national civil, servidumbre, servants.
Yes, and there were... I remember seeing...
When,
I think
you know,
we're speaking about the same programme. I think Emma was there as well. Or she was interviewed. And the way they were denigrating the jobs that you do here.
Yeah, as if you were...
You're not looked down upon.
As if you're looking, you know, you're doing a charity. You know,
But
if you're working here, it's because you're earning a living.
But the
You know, you're
reality
earning
is
a living.
that the people here in Gibraltar don't look down on you.
But why should they? I mean,
No. But the very fact that,
why
you know,
discuss the idea that people should look down at anybody else?
But this is what I mean. The
But
people in Gibraltar don't
aren't we
look down.
falling into the trap of the arguments are being put by people who despise us, and they're saying we do look down on people in La Linea, and we say, no, we don't. That is not an issue.
No. They weren't saying we look down on them. I'm saying we don't. But the same people from Central in this debate, they were actually pulling down, saying that you were servants and that you were doing menial jobs and that you were doing worthless jobs.
And that we're anti-Spain.
Unconcern
Yes,
about the
we're
people.
not very good at Spain.
It's this unconcern about
Spain.
you know, from your own, from people who should be looking after your interests, and yet they just don't care.
But that is a given.
They just don't care.
We all agree
it's
with that.
Really bad.
No,
but this is falling on what you were saying.
We don't.
It's really bad.
We are defending people from La Linea because it's our responsibility. It's not my responsibility. People from Madrid or from Seville or from every place. And people from La Linea need to find jobs here in Gibraltar. We need the Gibraltarians spend their money in La Linea because Gibraltarians love to go to La Linea to enjoy our way of life.
I'd like to bring in a professional view on that.
And our way of
do you think
life.
that's still happening?
People going to La Linea? Or?
People spending their money in La Linea?
I think it's happening less. I think people are refusing to queue for 3 hours to go across, and then having the uncertainty of maybe having to queue now 2 hours to come back to Gibraltar. So I think at the moment it's. I mean, you only have to spend a weekend in Gibraltar to see that there's a lot more people out and about. I also have no doubt that when the frontier queues ease, and they will, people then start going back to the normality of doing the things that they normally do.
Well, I think you know the important thing is how do you address the campaign, this campaign of what is in essence hatred towards the people and anybody who collaborates with them, which is what we're sort of in essence hearing. And I think that responsibility falls squarely on the shoulders of the British government, in part, who have resources and an ability to assist, and I think to some extent in their terminology, in the way they're supporting us more lately, particularly the statement of David Cameron, National Day. I think we're starting to see some stronger support there. But it also requires a level of cooperation at a local level, to make sure that the message, the real message, is getting across, and to counteract that.
Do you think there's a will for that cooperation to exist?
This is the only concern I have, and I'll be brutally honest, because I find it disappointing, given the interaction between people in Gibraltar, in Spain, and vice versa, that, you know, I understand from Nuria that she has a membership of 200 plus, or thereabouts. You know, look, there's 7,000 Spanish workers in Gibraltar. I feel that they each should be a messenger in support of Gibraltar, counteracting this propaganda. And I think people throughout the area who know Gibraltar, who understand that we're not the people that they're trying to present as us, do have an obligation. And I think what I would say is that I welcomed the fact that it seemed that the unions were getting together to some extent to make a joint effort. And I think that there is an obligation on all parties at different levels, at a UK level, at a Gibraltar government level, but also at every level, to start fending off the accusations of what is a horrendous, well thought out, but a horrendous campaign, which can have its legacy, as I was saying before, can have a long legacy. Because now we're getting the next generation on both sides of the border perceiving matters in a way that is actually very far from the truth and unnecessary. So I think it's important that we do that.
This media campaign against Gibraltar has been prevalent largely in Spain, but when it comes to the rest of the world, do we? I mean, does everyone
the rest
feel
of
that
the world,
perhaps
we're not affected by the rest of the world?
we might be when it comes to representing Gibraltar's interests abroad.
Our commercial interests lie in commerce with Spain. We don't go for the day on a trip to Scandinavia. We cross into the border into Spain. The damage that can be done in the Bay of Gibraltar is not by Russians, it is by Spaniards. The issue is in Spain, so the suggestion that somehow, which we are, I think we're doing fairly well in the British press, I think we've had a great deal of support, but that doesn't count, because that is last year's battle. This year's battle is the poisoning of the 38 million people we live next to against us. And it is a deep, deep poison. Now,
but when it comes to defending Gibraltar's interests abroad, it's the British that have to defend us in Europe, at the UN, on a defence point of view. And if the British government is put under pressure by the British press...
That is last year's argument.
No, but
Fabian Picardo, let me just finish something. Fabian Picardo, and you will agree with me because you represent the Chamber of Commerce. Fabian Picardo referred to the frontier as our choke point. Now, the choke point is a very vulnerable part of a human being. Mr. Boris Johnson, the Mayor of London, refers to the frontier as the throat of the Gibraltarians. My concern at the moment is not what they think in the rest of the world. My concern is what is happening at the frontier, where we have crack Guardia Civil troops who have been told to look for trafficking by a minister who today, and I've heard Mr. Hernandez say that he's happy that now we're talking about dialogue. We're not talking about dialogue. He says that we must talk because there are issues of trafficking through the frontier. And he is not questioned as to what trafficking. So the narrative, the debate has now moved. And yes, Madrid is right. There is trafficking because no one's contradicting it. And now let's have dialogue. I can think of no worse situation for Gibraltar to be in. This is not...
Does anyone think that, for example, international support is important?
And this is what I wanted to bring out.
Who internationally is going to support
We say it doesn't matter what the press in Sweden, but I think it does. And it does affect, and you can probably vouch for this as well, of course it affects our businesses. We have a lot of international businesses. Our finance centre are mainly international businesses. The gaming companies, they would not be here. And we know for a fact that they weren't here when the Gibraltar reputation was bad. Now, this is why I said this is the difference between now and last time. We were being vilified internationally, and it was a time when I was travelling internationally. I know exactly how hard it was to try and even address some of those, you know, because some of the things that I came across in places like the OECD were absolutely ridiculous. How on earth did you get it? That's a point of view that Spain's put forward. We do not get the other side because nobody defended us. Now, it's been different. Now, we have had articles all over in newspapers, maybe not as many as we'd like, Charles, but we have. You've picked up newspapers all over who have come out with our point of view.
What about my point about the throat and the choke point of the throat?
Locally, but it also affects internationally.
We live locally.
But you can't say it doesn't affect us what is out there.
You both represent business. You both represent business. Are you really saying that the frontier is of no consequence?
No, we're not saying that. You said that the only consequence is the frontier. But that out there it doesn't matter. Yes,
okay, we need to have one person talking at the same. Nick was trying to get in.
Look, I think we probably all agree if we actually break it down on this, and that is that international support is vital. Is vital at every level. And why? Because we have an international finance centre, because we need the international support to expose Spain and its tactics at the forums that it needs to be exposed, whether that's in the EU, whether that happens to be in the context of sport, whatever it is. So it's fundamentally important to have international support. But that doesn't take away Charles' very succinct point, which is inevitably the most important concern we have is our immediate neighbours. Why? Because we interact with them. Now, I don't even think that a close-fronted situation would be fatal to Gibraltar. I don't. Islands live without that situation, but it's not something that we want. It's not something that's desirable. And in fact, a squeezing of that choking process or squeezing of that frontier doesn't do us any good. Socially, it creates problems. People haven't had a good summer.
The slashed tyres, the burnt cars.
Yeah, it's not good socially, it's not good politically, economically, and I think it's an issue that we have to focus on. So that's why I said support has to be at a high level, international level. It has to also be at a local level. And that change of mindset that has been developed in Spain against us over the last few months, or if not longer, has to start to change. And that happens with an effort at all levels.
Do you think that perhaps it has set back those cross-border relations for another couple of generations?
Yes.
Because we were seeing, for example, at the last World Cup, we were seeing young people from Gibraltar who don't... It's not just that they don't remember the close frontier years, but they also don't remember the 2001, the 2001 bilateral discussions over joint sovereignty, because they might have been 8 or 9 years old at the time. They might, at the last World Cup, they were wearing Spain T-shirts, and now all of a sudden we're seeing a new harbouring of cross-border resentments. Is that something that perhaps is worrying?
Yes.
It definitely worries me as a worker, because obviously it's not comparable to the Spanish media attack, but you do get a lot of people here that then go against, that use the word Spanish for everybody and use the word...
Yes.
And they do also, they pay it out on people that are across the border, who, without finding out whether you are agreeing or not agreeing, Spain becomes the same as somebody far away says, all Gibraltarians are this. You also get sentences here where they say, and Spaniards are that.
Yes.
And I'm a Spaniard. And I'm like,
Yes.
I'll have to keep quiet, So it does create a lot of...
So it's the elephant in the room, isn't it? There are radicals on both sides.
Of course. And a lot of us people from La Linea, you get the short end of the of both sides, because you can't do anything with your own government, but here you have to also be quiet. You can't, because you know that up to a certain extent you can understand why people are going down that route, but it's not acceptable either.
And for us it's a problem too, because we have been working very hard to improve our relationship, our neighborly relations, and now we see that it's more difficult for us. And maybe I think we people from Gibraltar and people from La Linea, and the mayor said before, we have to be above from this politics, policies, because we need to have a very good relationship. We need to improve that, and we need because if people from Spain see that Gibraltarians and Linenses are together, and we can get better things that if we are fighting or something like that, then we can show that it's better to have a very good relationship than to be bullying Gibraltar every time. It's not. I think we are. Spanish government is not going to get anything bullying Gibraltar. I think, but
well,
we need
it's
to
set back. There have been comments everywhere saying that it sets back the relationship many years, when so much was being achieved, for example, by the tripartite forum.
Yes, yes, I'm afraid so. Yes, I think that our relations are not very good. But after that, she said, maybe our workers here in Gibraltar say that sometimes they can suffer, not suffer really, but they can listen.
Yeah. Not everybody has. Not everybody's calm. If you're calm, you can say, okay, it's not towards me. They're saying Spaniards, but it's not personalised.
Yeah, it still happened.
But not everybody can, you know.
There's radicals on both sides, and let's be quite honest, if your car is burned there today, you're hardly likely to be calm when you come in.
And operate in a rational frame of mind.
And if your tires are slashed, you're going to come in here, and that is not the government is doing it. It's somebody, radicals on that side. But it's not conducive to you being calm. So you can understand some people.
No, but I mean the person on the other side as well. You know, okay, I can understand that, but I'd like sometimes people here to understand that there are many Spanish workers that are sometimes asked to keep a calm, that sometimes it is a very strong effort, because it's not always... Do you think
Gibraltar's kept amazingly calm?
I think...
Oh, Gibraltar and La Linea in general.
Absolutely.
I was just about to say that.
Because we've been the ones who've been hit and hit and hit.
And in
you've
that
suffered
sense,
the consequences of
Gibraltar always
what we've been hit
gains
with.
Prestige. And, you know, for me, it's
Well,
risen above it.
National Day this year would have been the type of environment where you would have thought something would have sparked, but it didn't.
No, I think, Gibraltar as a whole is behaving exemplary.
Yeah?
Yeah. I agree with you.
Especially in line of the pressure that we're having. The Chamber of Commerce, as you know, is completely apolitical, so we don't go into the politics of why we're here, or if things have been done differently where we're here, or has it got to do with PP or whatever. What we are doing is we're engaging with the government in monitoring the situation on behalf of our members, and what I think is crucial, and that's where I disagree slightly with Charles, is that we maintain promoting Gibraltar internationally. I think Gibraltar is in a fantastic position internationally today. I think Gibraltar's reputation internationally is a really good reputation. You have many Gibraltar professionals going out and selling Gibraltar and selling the benefits of doing business in Gibraltar. And I think we have to keep at that game of concentrating in promoting Gibraltar internationally, because that is something that we do very well. And I think Spain is in isolation in calling us a paraíso fiscal. I think if you look at their definition of what paraíso fiscal is, it pretty much amounts to any country that pays less tax than they do. So under that banner, you could get Ireland, you could get Malta. We need to take a commercial break now, and when we come back to the third part of this special 90-minute viewpoint, we'll be taking some of your tweets and emails for the panel to answer. So stay tuned to Viewpoint. We'll be back in just a few minutes.